Welcome to Technado.
Welcome to another wonderful episode of Technado. I'm one of your three hosts, Sophie Goodwin. Before we get started, I want to take a moment and thank the sponsor of this podcast, ACI Learning, the people behind IT Pro. If you want to get a discount on your IT Pro membership, remember you could use that code Technado30. Once again, I'm Sophie, and I'm not alone here. In fact, we have a special guest with us this week, Mr. Ronnie Wong. How are you doing today, Ronnie?
I am well. Once again, thank you for inviting me back after the previous debacle. I thought I would not be here.
I don't think I witnessed the previous debacle.
Be
I
thankful.
don't think I was not present for it.
Yeah,
Here now.
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Do you think you can repeat it this week for me?
Debacle?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. And I'm sure to help us in that debacle, Daniel, how are you doing?
As always.
I'm just wondering how Ronnie got all that pasta out of his shorts after the previous debacle.
It took a while.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. It was a disaster to say the least, but an interesting phenomenon to witness.
It took carb loading to a whole new level. Oh, mamma mia. Okay. Well,
The spaghetti incident will forever be referred to
the
as.
spaghetti incident of 2023.
Did we just get into like Italian accents here just by
Yeah.
accident?
Hey, I did watch The Equalizer 3 this weekend,
Like an Italian
and
movie?
he was in Italy.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
Spoiler? No,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah, spoiler, yeah. That's
It's a twist at
you
the end.
didn't know until the end.
You think-
Why are all these American Bostonians speaking Italian?
You think he's in Little Italy the whole time.
No. Sicily.
It zooms out at the end and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
Sicily.
Whoa.
All right. Well, we are already off track. We haven't even gotten into the first article, which is exactly
That's
how
on
we like
purpose.
it.
Yeah.
That is just how we like it. So we'll go ahead and jump in. I may have had more of a heavy hand this week in selecting the articles, so just so you know, it's going to be special. This first article comes to us from Ars Technica. Rebuilt Microsoft Teams app promises twice the speed and half the RAM usage. So I saw quite a few things pop up about this week, and as a regular Teams user, I thought, well, this seems relevant. So I'm curious if y'all think that this it says it's rebuilt basically from the ground up. How do you think this is going to affect Teams users?
Well, I'm thinking more of like the impetus behind this, or like the Teams team. You know, the team, the project manager probably got together in a room with him and said, "All right, so we're looking at Teams. I'm thinking we should do it again and not suck so bad this time, right? Because we've had a few complaints. What can we do to increase the speed, right?" And as Microsoft typically does, they like to call the beta test their alpha.
Yeah.
And then have people complain and then go, "Oh yeah, we can fix that." But yeah,
And let's think about it, right? The reality is, right, Slack is kind of the big,
you're right.
the 800-pound gorilla
Yep.
in that space of what we're doing, of what Teams does and what Slack does. And they needed to get up to speed really quickly to try and do some type of parity feature that we actually do see between Slack and
Yeah.
what Teams was. So they relied on Electron. And the Electron app itself in the background, right, it takes up a ton of RAM. So, of course, it probably just got started and then it started snowballing as more and more people started onboarding into Teams. And then they realized something, well, that kind of really sucks up a ton of RAM usage. So they had to find some replacement at some point that was going to give them what they needed. And also, of course, eating up more RAM means speed goes down, everything. So after a while, you'd have that too. So they instead decided to abandon, probably not the right word, they decided to change and
Like
do
they
something
dropped
else.
it off on the
Yeah.
side of the road.
Well, I mean, that's what
Free
it sounds
puppy.
like, right? They're like, hey, we're no longer using Electron in the background. We're using their, the Edge Web View 2 in the back end,
Okay.
which is supposed to be based off the Edge browser, whereas Electron was based off of the Google browser, right? So every time you actually are opening something in Electron, it's like opening 2 or 3 Google browsers at the same time. And so it just keeps eating up more. And according to them, this is going to fix it. Now, what I don't understand is that they're saying, hey, they rewrote it with that promise of running faster, regardless of whether it's Windows or Mac. But Mac doesn't have in the background that Edge 2 browser.
So, like, how are they pulling this off?
Yeah.
Maybe they did some tweaks and stuff to the regular Electron-based. Maybe it's not like fully abandoned. They still send it a check once a month or something.
So I checked on mine because I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I wonder what this update does. And then when I opened mine up, it still says it's Electron in the background. So
Yeah.
So on the Mac, it may be that they're holding on to that Electron until they figure it out.
Right.
or they're going to do something like what you were talking about, doing some type of tweak that makes it better.
Well, I, for one, will be happy to see, because my teams that I do run it in a browser-based. I don't install the clients just because I don't want to have that headache of that. More software. I already have software installed that runs it, so why install more software that runs it? Anyway, right? So I hope to see, because, and maybe some of it's my own fault. Maybe it's a self-inflicted wound where I don't really, it doesn't update very often, and it doesn't update very well. And then if you're doing intensive things like a Teams call, a meeting, you can start to hear the Harrier jump jet action start to occur. Fans going, you're like, wow. Why is this? And, it's all the encryptions and the video processing that's occurring. It starts to cook things up. So I'll be interested to seeing how much more performant my system does actually get due to this update.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, right? Is that people go along, they'll start giving more and more feedback to it that will, of course, make it better. But at the very beginning here, they're essentially just saying, all right, we're kind of changing everything. And so Windows users will actually experience that more, because I think it actually happened as of yesterday is when they actually said everything is going over. But I think you start seeing some of the updates even in the past. And I've heard about this inside of our company where people said, did you get the new Teams update? I was like, no. And I said, it's terrible, or whatever it is, right? And then you keep hearing about, like, I'm going to roll it back. And so we'll actually see what this next one does for us.
Has anybody seen numbers on this thing? Like, it says that they're promising twice the speed and half the RAM. Is that just like a generous estimation on what we're looking at? Or is it going to be more like, twice the RAM and half the speed?
Yeah. Well, anything is better, right? Because I say that. I shouldn't say that, because somebody's going to write in and say, you know nothing, and it's true overall.
No one disagrees with this statement.
The Electron too, right? It is like opening multiple, instances of Chrome at the same time. So if you're running Teams, you're essentially opening that. Then if you open up another little window, you're running it again. If you go and say you now have like 4 or 5 of those, right, to individual team members, each one of those is essentially a Chrome browser running in the background and eating up more and more RAM. So if this Edge 2 does it differently where it doesn't do that, at least we know the RAM usage should go down.
Well, and if
the performance.
Yeah, and if they do see those hits, and by the way, we should totally keep an eye out for benchmarks, because there's a lot of like YouTube channels and stuff that will do benchmarks. If they do get that level of performance, would that mean that, well, obviously Electron is old and busted, and the Edge thing is the new hotness, and everybody needs to switch over to that because you get much more performant. I mean, honestly, I'm like, if that happens, I'm like, yes, I want more things in what's it called again? The Edge 2, Edge Web 2, whatever. I don't know.
I can't remember. And I'm looking right at the article.
Weird
and I can't
Microsoft
remember.
thing.
Edge Web View 2.
Web View 2. That's it. Thank you. So I want my stuff in Edge Web View 2. Whoa. Apparently, I forgot to turn off my ringer.
Unacceptable.
Oh, man. No wonder.
Rookie mistake.
I am useless.
We should have like a hat of shame that we make him wear when that happens.
So I'm like partly deaf, so that's why it's so loud.
So the weird thing is Electron, and it's probably one of the more controversial apps that are out there.
Yeah.
Because it does eat up so much of the resources on the computer system. But here's the thing. It provides weird functionality that we don't think about. So they can build one app like Teams, and they can actually build it to go on Windows and on a Mac, right? Without having to actually go to each platform.
Because everything runs Electron,
So everything runs Electron. So that probably was one of the reasons why they chose it at the beginning. It's like, oh, we have Mac users, we have Windows users. This has to run on both. And so, it's not a bad thing, except its performance idea. So you'll probably still see a lot of development inside of that.
I'm sure.
What I don't want to say is it's so terrible, nobody should ever use it.
Yeah.
So
WebView 2. I'm not the only one who's got that. Actually, I'm going to. Now we're all like, hey, everything is muted, right?
I love I know this isn't really, it's not like technically sound necessarily, but I love looking at the comments on these. Because there's all, like, I could look at something and be like, oh, okay, could be good or bad. And people have such strong opinions in the, like they're threatening to kill people's mothers or whatever.
It's religious wars every day.
It really is. So there was somebody that was talking about how they used WebEx for years and they finally moved to Teams. And I'm a fan of Teams, especially on mobile. And somebody was like, in related news, microwave leftover chicken nuggets are more enjoyable than broken glass salad with lemon juice dressing. And you're like, oh my God.
They are creative, aren't they?
It's like
I
the
mean,
Shakespeare of
Yeah.
comments here on this article.
That's a good one.
It's
a good
kind of
one.
weird, right? It's kind of like taunting you to leave a review, and you can't up. Can you up that one? And then you're like, I really can't.
Oh, I can. I just probably get canceled.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, what else is new?
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's always my favorite part of these is just like I like to look at what other people think instead of
It's a good thing, right? Because you do find out like there's always two sides to whatever is being presented there, and somebody will support it, and then somebody will not like it, and it's up to us to investigate more. So
like you were saying, it's sometimes like how you said you'll hear about the update before it actually happens to you, and so you just kind of dread it because you hear how bad it is.
Yeah.
So that's happened to me several times here. Like Donald mentioned, like, oh, just see what they did to Teams, and I'm like, what did they do to Teams? So, it'll be interesting to see. I haven't paid much attention to its performance this week. I haven't been using it much. So I wonder if it'll make any discernible difference, at least for me. I don't know. So anyway.
They've added smallpox to Teams. Oh, great.
It's better than polio. That's great.
Well, so like with most end users, which I'm not going to be able to say for one reason or another, probably nobody cares, in the reality, right? Is only when they complain that something is then it's like, well, maybe
the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Mm-hmm.
Squeaky wheel gets the grease. Right. So that's probably what happened here.
Yeah, if it's not a noticeable difference, nobody's gonna care much about it. This is a good point. Well, anyway, so yeah, if you're a Teams user, congratulations or sorry that happened to you. I guess we'll see. But we'll go ahead and move on because I know Teams isn't exactly our favorite topic. This article comes to us from CSO Online. It says Google and Yahoo announced new email authentication requirements for 2024. So apparently, this any bulk email senders, they're going to be required to strongly authenticate emails, following like certain best practices. So I would imagine this is a good development, right?
It really is, right? Because email itself is not secure. Somebody can spoof, an email domain, can spoof an email address, you name it. Because I think one of the first things that I think I remember learning in terms of hacking was actually spoofing an email address from, if I remember right, from Telnet or something. I don't remember what that.
You would use Telnet to basically send mail, the system that sends mail. Aptly named, right? Or SMTP, right? The Simple Mail Transfer Protocol is really what we're talking about. SendMail is a software platform that allows you to use SMTP to send emails. SendMail is very popular, but it's not the only game in town. You would take Telnet, you would log into port 25, and because email is meant to send, it's not really something that's blocked or has a lot of security around because I'm just sending email. It was open. The port would be, so if you found an email server, you could log in. You could still do this, honestly, and with a Telnet client, and then start throwing commands at it. Right? We typically do this automatically via an application. Right. So when you say I want to send an email, you fill out who it goes to and your message body and your subject line and all that fun stuff, and your client kind of wraps all that stuff up into a package and sends that via commands under the hood, like through an API, to your SMTP server, and the SMTP server receives it and sends that message along, if it can, right? Well, like to Ronnie's point, you can log in with Telnet and start throwing SMTP commands at it, and it'll go, hey, that's SMTP commands. I know that.
Yeah.
Right? This is how stuff works. It's fun. And you can say, well, I want to send an email from bgates@microsoft.com. And it goes, cool, your sender name is bgates@microsoft.com. It doesn't know any better. It just assumes that what you said is right. The sending is what it cares about, right? Because it's sending. If I need to know that I can send to this person. So you would give it a valid email address, and that's a great way to do user enumeration for a domain is to say, hey, I want to send to Bob at XYZ Corp. And it goes, hey, that's a good sender address. Or error, no sender. You go, cool, Bob at XYZ course does not exist. Or, hey, I got me a good username. Let me write that down. Right? So it was a good way to enumerate that. And then I could spoof email addresses. Hey, Bill Gates sent me an email saying, he's going to pay me $2 million to help him, siphon funds from a Nigerian prince or whatever the case is. Right? So email spoofing. And now we live in the day of like BEC and business email compromise and stuff like that. Email spoofing is still quite a big deal.
Sure.
So
so using a system that was widely designed to make communication happen easily, of course, then people started taking advantage of it that way. But there have been systems out there for a long time, and the ones that they mentioned in this article, the DMARC, the
DKIM.
DKIM, SPF. I always say
Sender
SFP.
Policy Framework. Yeah.
I always say it backwards, which is kind of like, I think, the sunscreen thing, if I remember right.
SPF is the sunscreen thing.
Yeah,
So
SPF
it's,
is the sunscreen. Yeah.
Oh, it is?
It's
Okay.
a rating.
Yeah.
for
Okay, so
right?
there you go.
they're locked in a legal battle over it, actually.
So these systems have been around for a while, but they're complicated to set up. Well, if you ever tried to type like the stuff in, and you don't type it in right, it doesn't work. And so where you go is your DNS registrar, and you have all this stuff that you have to type in exactly the way that they specify it. And when they send it to you like an email, like, hey, here's the stuff you need to do, the lines are always broken up, and you're never sure, like, is there a dash, or is there a space? Is there something in between there?
Yeah.
So it really has to be very specific in the way that it works here. So these things, they actually are set up to provide better security. So you can't spoof the domain. You can't do all these other
with
things
like
too.
Sender Policy Framework, right? That's like your gateway drug into email security, where you basically say, these are the domains that I trust, right? If it doesn't come from this domain, and of course, DNS is working under the hood to help you identify whether or not someone's lying to you about what domain they're coming from, right? And then it goes, cool, that's a good domain, or I don't really know you, so no, right? And then so that stops that, and then of course you can get into like DKIM and DMARC, and it starts pulling the ideas of using certificates. And this is digitally signed, and look at all this stuff. That like, there's more authentication behind what's going on, instead of just, hey, I'm an email.
Look at my name tag. You can tell.
It says email on it, right?
Yeah. One of them I can't remember which one off the top of my head. One of them validates essentially the integrity of the message, right? And then the other one, like you were talking about, really provides that basic security. And then the other one actually says both of these are supposed to work together. So all this has been around for a long time. Now Google and Yahoo, according to this, they're going to require it, which is probably a good thing overall. And for businesses, it should be done. But if you don't have someone that's really good in email, they might
could be a bit of a slog.
It's a bit of a slog. And then when you set it up wrong, somebody tells you immediately, like, no, that's not right. You got to do it again.
Getting emails from our number one,
and that's what can happen.
Customer or whatever.
So they have to be set up in an order. They have to be, and when you take a look at the registrar, it does look a bit confusing. So I'll 100% admit, when they said it's a little bit complicated, I would say.
It's not fun to set up at all. But if you get yourself a heck of a little skill there, if you get good at doing that. So I mean, you could build this in a home lab, no problem. So if you're new to that and you don't want to like jump into the deep end of the pool quite yet, stand up a test network and start playing with this and make sure all that stuff will work. And that's a great skill to have in your toolkit there.
It's not a good one to practice on a production network right away.
No.
But
don't start there.
But I'm not saying you can't do it.
It's like putting a little leaguer in with MLB players. Like he seems to be struggling.
Now, for those of you that already know how to do this, like, it's easy. I get it. But like me, I struggled through the first time I set this up. And then finally I got it right. But it did take me a while before I made sure like everything was exactly the way that it needed to be.
I don't even have to try it to know I would struggle. So I can just assume that that's how it would be. It also said that bulk senders are required now to enable uneasy subscription, which I know it's not the main focus of the article, but as an end user, it's like great. Because I get emails so often and it's like, I don't remember ever signing up for this. And you try to unsubscribe and it's like, there's no link, or there'll be a link at the bottom that's like, do you need help? And it's like, well, what does that mean? Does that mean I can unsubscribe, or am I going to click that and it's going to take me to some bogus website? So anyway, it's a pain in the rear.
But I think you make a great point there, right? For most people that go, I only receive emails, what's the big deal? It should tamp down the volume of these senders, like what you're talking about, that you're not really saying is a trusted one that I want to receive anything from. So,
Well, now that we have password managers, you can just create a new email address for everything you sign up for. Right?
It's true.
I mean, it does happen. There are people that do it.
I have like this just 10 different inboxes. That's
10?
where all my Netflix email goes.
Try 100.
Wow, really?
Well, because you got a password manager, it just saves the login. So if you need to check the email for, signing up for Netflix and other things, you just go to your my Netflix _897 or whatever you created this nomenclature for, and check your email.
Isn't there something you can do where you just add like a plus sign to your regular email or something like that? You add something on the end.
I think some of them do have
Some of them
those.
do have
yeah.
that. And then it's still your inbox, but it's
It's
like
a subdomain host.
interesting. That's not the point.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
It's sort of relevant, semi-relevant. Anyway, so
We'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll you're lucky to get something
Judges,
like that out of me. Yeah.
The judges will allow it.
So that's good news then.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear. We actually we've got a guest in house this week that suggested this article. So thanks to Charles for that.
Cool. Great article.
Because it slipped by me. I did not know this was happening. So cool beans. We're gonna go ahead and move on to one of my favorite topics. We talked about that. I guess it's kind of Deja news, but
It is.
it's an unofficial Deja news segment. We talked about this a couple months ago when Dawn was out because the cat's away, the mice will play. Even though the mice play when the cat's here anyway.
Yeah, we're stupid mice.
Yeah, we don't really think it through. But this is more it's in gaming and I guess kind of legal. But I don't know if y'all remember there was a big lawsuit going on and Microsoft was trying to acquire Activision and they were having to get approval from all these different places all over the world. And so finally now, this Friday the 13th, spooky, supposedly they are finally going to reach a decision. They're waiting on a decision from the Competitions and Markets Authority on this merger. So this article comes from Capacity Media. It says CMA decision on Microsoft and Activision merger imminent. It's a 75 billion actually. So that's updated. 75 billion merger. So it's huge. I mean, like
$75 billion.
Mhm.
Wow.
It's like the biggest in tech
That
history.
is huge.
Yeah. It's giant. So Activision, obviously, the people behind Call of Duty and various and sundry other games
say
that
Call
you
of
may
Duty.
know.
World of
No one
Warcraft
cares.
and
Yeah.
stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
And Candy Crush, and
Candy Crush,
you guys
yeah.
remember, and they talked about how much they loved Candy Crush last time. So anyway, I just thought this was interesting because we did talk about this a couple months ago, and it's been ongoing for almost 2 years now. They've been trying to kind of get this wrapped up, and they were supposed to reach a decision back in July. There was some self-imposed deadline that if they didn't meet it, Microsoft was going to have to pay. I don't know if they did. It kind of just seems like they kept pushing back the deadline. Supposedly this Friday is the day, and who knows, that may change. But given that it has to kind of do with gaming and things, I know there's probably some overlap between folks that listen to the podcast and folks that enjoy gaming. Figured that would be a nice little update to provide. I didn't know if y'all were following this case at all.
So I haven't really followed it too much as far as what the original announcement I did, but like this one on the backup that now they're saying that it's going to come to the decision. It's the stuff in between that to me was actually really interesting, is that it came to that point where once the CMA made this decision that they were going to investigate it further, then all of the back and forth between the other companies like Activision and Microsoft and all the other things that they started saying about it brought so much pressure that the CMA, the Competition and Market Authority, brought in a third, like an independent investigation company to verify whether or not this is something that should go forward. So they're waiting to hear back on that, I'm assuming between today and tomorrow. And then they're going to issue their final decision Friday at this point. So there's so much going on to bear in that big of a market where $75 billion has potential of unlimited income into the future, that it's kind of interesting that they literally, all of the parties just kind of kept pushing and pushing to like, somebody independent needs to make this because you're not doing it based off of what's really objective. And so Microsoft was pushing that, and Activision was probably doing the same thing in the background, to the fact that the biggest quote here that they list in this article, in an interview with the BBC, Brad Smith, Microsoft president over in Europe, I guess, said yesterday, probably the darkest day in our 4 decades in Britain. That
okay, so the Luftwaffe wasn't the darkest day.
Well, for their company, yeah.
Right? Like, I feel like there were darker days.
Yeah.
That's just me.
And if when they're talking about that, they were issuing statements like, "Hey, this makes the European Union more friendly towards this, whereas making Britain kind of less friendly towards marketplace." And so they really did. They put that pressure on to the point where that department, whatever it is, the authority, had to actually go third party. They have to look over this and then give us a recommendation or a decision here.
Well, I mean, a $75 billion deal. It's kind of a big. It's probably a good idea to get some other people involved that have no vested interest.
Yeah.
By the way, I looked it up while Ronnie was musing, and this deal is bigger than the GDP of Sri Lanka, Ghana, Belarus, Uruguay, like a whole laundry list. Like it would be number 75 on the list of, hold on,
Bigger than the economies of
177 countries.
Yeah,
Wow.
Yes.
I can see that.
This deal is bigger than like that many countries. Like
Yeah.
that's crazy amounts of money.
Last time I had looked at this, it was, I mean, obviously it was ongoing and it was a big deal because it was still, I mean, it was obviously a high amount of money. And now it's gotten to the point where it's got its own Wikipedia page, specifically this acquisition of Activision Blizzard by Microsoft. Because I was looking, I'm like, oh, let me see if I can find anything else on it. And it's got its own wiki page. So if you're curious as to how this all kind of has been playing out since January 18th, 2022, so almost 2 years ago, there is a whole Wikipedia page on it with background and history and a whole list of all the countries, all the commerce bodies that have had to approve it. Saudi Arabia, Ukraine, China. There's like, I don't know, a dozen or 20 of them there. I can't count. I'm not here to do math. But yeah, so this has kind of been ongoing, and it's all going to come down to now this UK commerce body.
All I care to know is will my Call of Duty experience be more immersive, more realistic, and have more purchasables?
They're all going to talk in British accents.
All that matters.
That's the only change.
Yeah, they're now Call of Duty's all SAS. And
all the, well, some of them, some of them kind of do.
Or SBS. Whatever.
Mission failed. We'll get them next time. They kind of already have that cadence. So yeah, that's the only change. I'm sure I mean, I think that part of the reason that there was a lot of kind of turmoil about this in the first place is because they were worried like, well, Microsoft's getting too powerful. They're getting too big. They can't acquire Activision. Activision's one of the biggest companies, they're behind one of the biggest games that exists. And then they were worried that it was going to mean that if Microsoft acquired Activision, is Call of Duty now not going to be available on other platforms?
Anything we love, it's a good tech oligopoly. Yeah. And I got to use the word oligopoly today.
That's true. Yeah, that was our buzzword of the day. So that's Daniel's going to win a prize. So yeah, some fun little legal news. You can't use fun and legal in the same sentence. But yeah, that's our, I don't know, Law and Order segment for the day. Deja News segment for the day.
Hit the doink doink.
Never heard it described that way.
Yeah. There used to be a commercial for Law and Order, and they were asking the actors about the sound, and they called it the doink doink.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
I feel like I hear that as like a cartoon bouncing ball.
Yeah.
That's kind of what that sounds like to me.
I wouldn't describe it as doink doink.
It's like a dun dun.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay.
But yeah, look up that on YouTube and you'll see it.
You learn something new every day. Interesting. That probably was before my time. But anyway, so not to depress you, but yes, I probably missed the boat on that one.
You're like 12, 13?
Yeah. Almost. Close to being a teenager. Yeah. Coming up on my birthday.
A tween.
Mom said I get my first cell phone if I make all A's.
Grown up now.
I know, it's crazy. So yeah, I just selfishly wanted to squeeze that in there, that whole update. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out on Friday and if they do actually reach a decision or if they push it out for another several months. But we'll go ahead and we've been talking for a while, so we will go ahead and take a quick break. But don't worry, we'll be right back with more Technado and more security news. Tired of trying to schedule your team's time around in-person learning? Isn't it a bummer to spend thousands of dollars on travel for professional development? What if we said you can save money and time and still provide your team with the best training possible? The answer to your woes is live online training from ACI Learning. With live online training, we provide our top in-person courses in private, online, instructor-led formats. You get to provide professional development in a manner that fits today's expectations. Entertaining, convenient, and effective. Our exam-aligned courses inspire the full potential of your team. Visit virtual instructor-led training at ACI Learning for more info. Welcome back. We're here with more Technado, talking about some security articles coming up. If you are enjoying the podcast and if you are watching on YouTube, I'd love if you guys left a comment, kind of talking about some of the first stuff that we went over. What do you think about this whole CMA approval of the Microsoft acquisition? What do you think about the new Teams app? Anything that you've got a lovely little opinion on, we would love to hear about it. We love hearing from y'all. And maybe we'll talk about it on the show next week. Who knows? We'll see. We just have to wait. So anyway, we'll go ahead and jump into our security news. We got a couple good articles for y'all today. This first one comes to us from Security Intelligence. It says, X-Force uncovers global Netscaler gateway credential harvesting campaign, which is a mouthful. So there's some details as to the specifics of this issue here. Daniel, you're kind of our resident security guy. I'd be curious to kind of hear you break this down or what you think of it.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
Yes. We can talk about this a little bit because it is an interesting thing. It looks like there's been 600 unique victim IP addresses hosting the modified Netscaler gateway login page, which is really the beginning of a larger attack that can be leveraged against these CVEs for Citrix. Citrix has got a problem, and they fixed it. Don't worry, right? Ultimately, spoiler alert: update your Citrix device if this is happening. But let me give you a little bit of detail about this. So what's available to certain attackers out there is they discovered that these Citrix Netscaler ADC gateways they have a flaw. They have a couple of flaws, actually. And if I read the security bulletin, it says Citrix ADC and Citrix Gateway Security Bulletin 4, CVEs 2023-3519, 2023-3466, and 3467, says multiple vulnerabilities have been discovered in Netscaler ADC, which is an application deployment. Oh, I'm horrible with this. It is controller, application delivery controller. That's what I'm looking for. And what ends up happening is you can do a few things. We've got a nice cross-site scripting, reflected. Who doesn't love that? It's a nice little cherry on top of this cake. We also have a privilege escalation to root administrator. That's no bueno, but that's a priv-esque, right? And then here's the real fun one. This is the one we're all here for. Unauthenticated remote code execution. That gets a CVSS score of... What is it? 9.8 on the CVSS score scale.
Out of a 10?
Out of a 10. Yes, that's out of a 10.
Oh.
Well, good job, Ronnie.
Yes. I kind of figured that one out.
Yes, he has won horrible data breaches for everyone that has this. Right? This says the appliance must be configured as a gateway, a VPN, virtual server, ICA proxy, CVPN, RDP proxy, or a AAA virtual server. Okay, so if you have
any of those,
if that sounds familiar to you, you're going to want to do something now. And that is update your device because, remote code execution. Unauthenticated, by the way. Don't forget that part. That's always my favorite. When that's on the front of it, you mean I don't have to have a login? Nope, you sure don't. Now, what ends up happening is they use this a little snafu in the Citrix system here to basically steal credentials. And once they have credentials, now they can log into the device. And from there, they start adding code and doing all sorts of bad stuff. Now, ultimately, the big thing is that we want to bring to the forefront is that if you are running these devices, the Citrix, I cannot say Citrix to save my life. They really need to change their name to something,
that you can pronounce.
That's just the thing. Netscaler ADC, or if you have a Citrix Gateway or AAA server, please take a moment. If you're watching this recorded, hit pause. If you're live, just cry for a second and run to the server closet and do some updating. You need to do updates. Updates are available, and that's where we're at. And really, what I wanted to kind of bring to the forefront here with this article is that big companies like Citrix, they have security flaws. Microsoft has security flaws.
Yep.
Apple has security flaws. Everybody has security flaws, and you need to stay on top of this. Every now and then, those security flaws are pretty horrible, like this one right here, where you have unauthenticated RCEs. That's bad. That's real bad. We don't like that because it can lead to further compromise down the road and theft of credentials. And, of course, no one ever reuses their passwords for any other thing, I'm sure. So that's not really an issue. Hint, hint, facetiousness alert. That people absolutely reuse passwords. So you need to change passwords, do that rotation, and get these updates. But here we are with just another big company with a major flaw in a major system, and could lead to worse and worse compromise down the road. And it can come from the fact that no one's perfect. I don't fault them for not being perfect. Right. I want to make that clear. I think I've been a big proponent throughout the history of my tenure on Technado of, unless you were just, what's the word I'm looking for, Ronnie? Negligent.
Yeah, negligent would be a good word.
Egregiously negligent in your coding practices. You're not doing security at all. Like, these things are going to happen.
Right.
But now the onus is on us to get out there and make sure we do our updates. I can't tell you how many pen testers and security people I've talked to. They're like, yeah, they didn't update, and there was a major flaw in some technology stack they were using, and I was easily able to compromise them via that. Right? That happens a lot. So don't be on Technado next week because you didn't update your Citrix, right?
Yeah,
system.
ADC.
Right. And now, British Airways is 3 million records breached in a data breach. That's not what we want, right? So that's the whole purpose of this, and how the chain of events. I put the technical article in here and not necessarily like a Hacker News or Bleeping Computer article, so that you can see how this thing kind of does. It's going to have your IOCs in there. It's going to have all the telltale signs and that technical information for your tech team to be able to kind of go, hey, we run Citrix, Netscaler, ADC, and we have it set up as a gateway, or we have a AAA server. We need to fix this. All that information is going to be in the article that we're using today, so that you can kind of walk through, see what that looks like, set up systems to see, have I been compromised already? Start looking for that stuff, do your threat hunting and do your mitigations.
So to me, one of the most interesting things about this, because as severe as it is, it's what triggered them to start looking for it, which is that they identified it through an incident response engagement where the client had discovered the script after investigating reports of slow authentication. So somebody finally said, this is taking too long to log in. They issued a support ticket, and somehow that led somebody to say, hey, what do you mean that you saw a script running here, or what happened? And that's what exposed this thing, which is pretty cool to me.
Yeah, that's super
that they were
cool.
able to go, slow login. And you said you found a script running during that slow login?
Yeah.
Dang.
This isn't my normal login amount of time. What's going on here?
I hate to say it. When I have a slow login, I'm doing something else, right? I'm just logging in.
I just assume that's computers suck. They hate me.
But at least somebody paid attention here, which led to this discovery.
No doubt.
Yeah.
I think even if I was paying extra attention during a slow login, I don't know that I would have. It would not have led to uncovering something like this. It would have just. This is really slow. Oh, there it goes. Like it would not have been.
Well, it just goes to show you, like, anything off normal, you see something, say something, right? Like, bring it up, go, hey, that was a little odd. And then check for consistency, like log out and try to log back in, see if does it take long again. Maybe wait, maybe not wait an hour, but, wait a little bit of time to see, maybe there's just a lot of network traffic. Try to look for that consistency and then go, this is taking a little bit longer than normal. I wonder why that is. And then call the help desk. And I listen, I've been on a help desk, and I know help desk people can get like cynical and jaded really quickly, because users will call you over the dumbest things, right? Things that are completely useless. And it gives us fatigue over like, I gotta answer the phone. Oh, it's this person again. And I know they're going to have some ridiculous thing. They bought a toaster and they want me to help them set it up. It's like, no, that's not what we do here. I'm not Oster. Or whatever, Sunbeam, who makes toasters. Why, call their help desk.
Yeah, and
I think I'm kidding.
Yeah,
I literally have people call me like, I bought a vacuum today. I'm like, what do you want me to do about it?
Congratulations.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah, fill out the warranty card.
Yeah, I cannot help you with your vacuum today.
Yeah, but I think and this is just from me talking on this, if I were on the help desk and somebody either sent a ticket in or called on email like, this is logging in really slowly, I don't know how serious I would have taken that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, but once they actually put like, they think they saw a script running, that probably should have raised a flag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd have been like, what made you think a script was running?
Yeah.
Like, scripts usually run in the background. Did something pop? I'm like, what are we talking about here? It was JavaScript. They're using JavaScript. So maybe there was a pop-up, or maybe there was something that kind of alerted them, or maybe they were just enough tech savvy to open up developer tools and
see
kind of like inspect elements and go, what is that script tag doing? That's a little interesting.
Yeah.
Well, like you said, there's a lot of technical details and kind of specifics in this article. If you want to go and look, it's Security Intelligence is the website. And of course, the title's up there on the screen. So if you want to go look deeper into some of that and kind of, if you're worried, you can go check that out and kind of see what's going on there. Excuse me. But yeah, definitely a lot of good information, and it's interesting to hear y'all talk about it from your perspective, because like I said, I'm the kind of person that would be like, oh, slow login, so it's kind of good to see that sometimes there's more than meets the eye with this stuff. Moving on, we've got, of course, a lot of security news in addition to this. This article comes to us from the Hacker News. It says, Looney Tunables, new Linux flaw enables privilege escalation on major distributions. And they've got the Linux penguin up there as the picture, which is such a happy little picture for
His name is Tux.
His name is Tux? He has a name?
Yeah.
That's so cute. He's like a little Webkins. Oh, I hope Tux is doing well in life.
Not being a great Linux user myself, what is Looney Tunables?
Looney Tunables. So it is called Looney Tunables because it is a privilege escalation vector in most Linux distributions. That is pretty not good.
Yeah.
Right now, it has a CVSS score of 7.8, so not nearly as bad as that unauthenticated RCE that we saw with Citrix, but still pretty darn bad.
Yeah,
right?
It's still pretty high.
So if you have some access as an attacker, you now pretty much have, almost invariably in a lot of ways, depending on the systems, a quick way to the mountaintop and have that root capabilities. It's funny, I was listening to some hackers this weekend, and they were talking about how a lot of times they don't actually go for root. Because whatever they're probably are just after the database. So as long as they had database creds that gave them access to the database, that they were happy with that. But sometimes it is nice to be able to bust that root privilege and get that full access to the entire system, be able to do whatever they want for X, Y, and Z reasons, usually setting up botnets and things of that nature. But with this one, this affects the glibc tunables environmental variable. Okay, so you'll probably aware most of what you see on your Linux system in the kernel, it's written in C, and there is this thing called libc, right? And it's library functions that allow your system to do X, Y, or Z. Now, these are almost invariably set off to the side, run in privileged mode, and you don't really have anything to do with it. It just does what it needs to do, and cool. You can call this, if you're writing your own program, you could call those functions and bring them in. They're there for you if you need them. But for the system, that's what they're there for. They're the under the hood things that do under the hood thing stuff. But, some Weisenheimer developer went, you know what? It would be nice if we gave the user some access to this because maybe they want to tweak and tune. Therefore, we'll call it a tunable. You can tune your libc functions, and that will be helpful for you. Awesome. And we'll stick it in an environmental variable. So if you need to make those changes, you just update that environmental variable, which if you work in a Linux system, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Things like path and env are very familiar to you, hopefully. If not, check that stuff out. It's very useful to Linux users to be able to say, this is what I want to be able to do. This is how I want my system to kind of operate. And I, as the end user, have some power over that. Well, they gave them power over this, and unfortunately, it led to a buffer overflow of the system. And through that buffer overflow, as we know, eventually, because you're able to control what's getting executed, you can put your own code in that executable space with a buffer overflow. And from there, Katie bar the doors. It's just have a good time. Boy, we beat the brakes off of this thing. We do whatever we want. Like, hey, give me a root shell.
Ooh.
And ultimately, that's what a lot of the proof of concept code that I've seen floating around the internet. Now, the reason this is a big deal, Linux systems are fairly popular in the server space. Also IoT. Good news is there's an update. Just like the Citrix thing, there's an update for this. You can update, and you are now, quote unquote, you're safe from this. You might not be safe from other things, but you're safe from this, right? But what about those Linux systems that are out there that aren't easily updated and yet are critical to your infrastructure? So this is why you need to be aware of this. Now, cool thing is if you look at the article, it talks about which environments. So they talk about vulnerability impacts major Linux distros like Fedora 37 and 38, Ubuntu 2204 and 2304, Debian 12 and 13, although other distributions are likely to be vulnerable and exploitable. One notable exception, Alpine Linux. You're doing it right, Alpine Linux, because they don't use the same library, the glibc's dynamic loader. They use the Musel library, libc library instead, which is not vulnerable to this. So if you are running Alpine Linux, breathe a sigh of relief. Sit back and laugh at everybody that's running Fedora and Ubuntu. I'm sure your day is coming as well. It's a game of cat and mouse, right?
It's only a matter of time.
It's it's what's up. So there you go. This is a big deal because there's a lot of Fedora, Ubuntu, right? Debian, these are major distros that are affected by this. So you got to get on your patch cycle pretty quickly on this one.
Yeah, I think that as I'm reading through the article, it talks about this really being the latest addition to a growing list of privilege escalation flaws that have now been discovered. And so I don't think that's going away, right? The very fact is people are going to keep discovering these things.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And then Linux is going to be, one of those where every week we're going to start seeing stuff.
Well, when you have a large open source code base.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense.
Right. It's going to happen. Now, and good news is a lot of this gets discovered by security researchers and responsibly disclosed, and patches are sent out. So that's good news. But remember, it goes right back to what we talked about in the first security article with Citrix.
Yeah.
The onus is now on us as the sysadmins, as the administrators of these systems, to do our due diligence and make sure that we, A, are aware of it, and B, we're doing something about it. We're not just sitting there. And you're like, okay, what if I got an IoT device that I can't update? Well, start looking for a replacement maybe, or putting firewalls in front, using secondary security controls around it to protect it until you can do some sort of in-place upgrade. Right? You can't just go, oh, well.
Yeah, too bad.
Oh, what are you going to do when these things happen? Yeah, you tell that to a judge and see how well they find it. Oh, yeah, that's a good legal argument. By the way, you... Here comes the judgment that you don't like.
It's interesting to see. Maybe it's just the nature of the way that the security news has gone this week.
Yeah.
But it feels so far like what we've talked about. It's almost like you're sitting at a news desk and you're like, these are things happening and here's what you need to do to prepare at home.
Yes.
Like it's very much like, hey, yikes, you should probably be worried. Let's go fix. And not in like a sensationalist way, but like a legitimate way.
Right.
This is a serious problem. As opposed to like, oh, there was some email addresses that got leaked. It's like not that that's not a good thing, but it's just interesting that it seems like the news is a little more serious this week.
Well, it's we focus a lot on data breaches and things of that nature, right? Because they are sensational, right? Oh, these move it and transfer and blah 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 that we take a look at, and they are big news, and that's why we cover it. And it is important for people to know that their data has been breached. But these are the kind of things. It's articles like this that help us go, well, no one's been breached yet. Let's keep it that way.
Be proactive.
Right. We can be a little proactive and know, hey, these are some big vulnerabilities that are out there this week that very well may affect a few of our listeners and viewers.
Yeah. Maybe they haven't yet, but they might.
Right.
So here's kind of what you can do.
This is your security threat feed.
Yeah.
Right. Technado can be a part of it. I want it to be a part of that.
Let's make that the title. Here's your security threat for this week's
episode.
this week.
Yeah.
So a couple of things that we talked about so far. It's, hey, this might end up being a problem. Here's what you can do. This next article, I wonder if it's like it's already become a problem. This comes from Bleeping Computer, and it says, if I can get the title to show up, it says, hundreds of malicious Python packages found stealing sensitive data. So already, the stealing of the sensitive data is happening. It's an interesting way to phrase that sentence. This data is already being stolen. So is the point of this to kind of like, hey, this might be happening to you. Here's what you can do to stop it, kind of a thing?
Correct.
Okay.
Again, we're trying to be as proactive as possible. These things happen. Obviously, with our first two articles, we have things that I think I think there was some attack chains that were happening as far as the Citrix things that occurred. But with this one, definitely attacks have been used. This is not new news. That this has occurred. I think we actually talked about this in a roundabout way, either last week or the week before when Justin was on. But when you use public repositories of open source software, anybody can upload things into these repositories, and that's what's happening here, right? So our article says hundreds of malicious Python packages found stealing sensitive data. They also do things like I typically see this kind of pop up with crypto. People, you download something from things like PyPy, right? And it's malicious. It looks legit. It sounds legit. It may actually do legit things, but it also does not legit things, right? Like start a crypto miner and send money back, or steal your crypto and send it to a different wallet, and then it starts getting laundered and so on and so forth, right? So with this article, let's just kind of talk about some of the big details about that, and then we'll go to the philosophy behind why this article is important, right? So it says that hundreds of info stealing packages that counted about 75,000 downloads have this past half year have been planted in open source platforms, okay? This campaign has been monitored since early April. Analysts at Checkmark's supply chain security team discovered 272 packages with code for stealing sensitive data from targeted systems. 272 packages. That's what they found.
Yeah.
There might be others that they did not find, right? The attacks have evolved significantly since they have been first identified. Again, going after crypto and data as well, but crypto is always a big one. And then they go into some detail about how you can spot these things yourself. So if you are downloading, and maybe we should wait till let's get to the philosophy of this, honestly. Why this is important. Why do I care, Daniel? Why? Well, because if you are developing line of business software for your environment, or you use software that utilizes open source packages, they may be compromised. You don't know, right? You have to do your security research on the tools that you are using for your environment. And the fact that a lot of people tend to reach out to these repositories for useful code, and it is useful. Did they do their security before they implemented something? That's a question you need to ask. And if you look at just about any security course or certification or whatever, and they start talking about fundamental security practices, it is third party that will most likely be on there. Have you third party checking? Like, did you check to see if these third parties are doing security as well as your first party and second party? That's where you got to go. You can't just stop the rabbit hole at your own front door. You got to kind of keep going and check for everything that's coming through your door, right? Because once it enters your gates, it's in. And this is definitely happening on a wide scale. And this isn't just, you can think of like Google Play Store. It doesn't happen as much with Apple App Store, but it does from time to time happen there as well. These third-party cloud providers, like, it doesn't matter where it comes from. This is just one instance of this that's occurring. Check that code. It's open source. All you got to do is look. And that kind of brings us back to the article. I don't know how far you guys got to read these articles. I know I submitted them a little lately in the day. I was dealing with. Anyway, is that there's some telltale signs a lot of times, right? Does it check to see if it's in a sandbox? Does it check to see if you look at an open source package and one of the things it's doing is, hey, am I in a virtual machine? Whoa, ding, 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 ding. That's a red flag right there. It's not necessarily indicative of whether or not it's malware, but you're putting that on a list of, okay, this checks to see if it's sandbox. If the next thing it does is delete itself after it checks that, like if you see an if statement that says, if sandbox equals yes, then rm-r,
remove it.
of my own self, that's bad, right? Because it's like, oh no, we're going to get busted, right? So those are kind of things that are there. Does it check for antivirus that's running? Does it start doing all these different checks? Does it start looking for credentials? Does it start checking browser history? Look and see if those things are happening. And yes, that requires some analysis of the tools and time and effort, which is what makes this really, really difficult. But good news, people like Checkmarks, they're out there helping you fight this fight. So again, threat feeds are important. Making sure that you have good intelligence coming in and you are checking that and you are staying on top of that and seeing what are the big threats out there. And if I'm implementing anything that uses any of these third parties, maybe I want to have a little look-see under the hood of what's going on in my network.
Yeah, I think we're also starting to see, at least from people like Checkmarks, which is a great, company that is doing what they did here, is that they're recognizing that these attacks are not staying static, right? That they're continuing to evolve, and they're actually even telling you, like, it may not appear in the same way that we actually saw it here. You might see more obfuscation layers that they're talking about, even more detection evading techniques that they're talking about, that they're also seeing using the same basic coding that, in terms of these packages. So they're allowing us to actually see that, hey, that is changing. We're changing. You also need to go beyond, like what you were saying here, to ensure that you're not just looking for, oh yeah, I have that package. I'm not going to use it anymore.
Yeah.
You were talking about some of the things you can look for to kind of indicate like if this is malicious or not. And they had mentioned that the init.py file. Is that how you would say that? INIT_PY. I don't know if there's a special way you would say that. I read that
that's just a code.
Right. I just didn't know if it sounded to me like init, like a British Python.
Oh, no, it's not British Python.
But it had talked about like, it only loads after it checks that it's running on a target system as opposed to a virtualized environment. And that's a typical sign.
That is
something to look for. And then the things that it targets, right? Antivirus tools and credentials and cryptocurrency wallet apps and things like that. I thought it was interesting. One of the things that it targets is Minecraft and Roblox user data.
Yeah.
And I know it's kind of a stupid thing to hyperfixate on, But I see stuff like that in these articles sometimes that I'm like, oh, as just like somebody that maybe isn't as super well versed in like the specific technical stuff that comes with this, seeing stuff like that, I'm like, Minecraft and Roblox.
Yeah.
I play Minecraft.
We just hit real close to home
Yeah.
there.
Gosh, yeah. Like now I'm worried. You know?
Well, what's funny is like if this gets installed on on a server system, or maybe this is something for mobile devices or whatever, it's like, are you checking for Minecraft and Roblox?
Yeah.
Do you have credit card information associated with those devices? Do you have user data associated with that, like when and where you play? Those games collect a lot of information about you, right? So this is the security mindset that you have to have. Like everything is going to increase my attack surface. Everything I install on my phone, everything I install on my devices, I have to worry about. I'm now responsible for doing updates and checking for threat intelligence about those things. If I'm not, I might miss something. And that's what the attackers are hoping for. And that's why they start casting wider and wider nets, using better obfuscation tools, using better techniques so that you don't catch them. And they're going to get something out of you.
And I think that this system has been out so long, since April. It's not very long.
Yeah.
But the way that it's evolved, right, goes beyond. We think Minecraft and Roblox is back. And you're like, what the heck are they looking for? But here, as you go on the next paragraph, right, the malware can take screenshots and steal individual files from compromised systems, desktop pictures, documents, music, videos, download directories. The victim's clipboard is also monitored for cryptocurrency addresses. Malware swaps them with the attacker's address to divert payments.
Right. So it's like a man in the middle attack there. Yeah.
It's like, so when we think, oh, here's the criteria we're looking for, we haven't even hit the scope of what we think.
Yeah. It's so crazy what these once you let that in the gate, right?
Yeah.
Once they're beyond your wall, the things they can do is basically anything they want at that point. And that's why it's so nightmarish to think that, oh no, I just, and all I did was, a pip install to get this thing to work because I made this really cool app. Yeah, it's cool. All right.
Yeah. It's like finding a squatter in your house.
Yeah.
What do you mean you're trying on my clothes?
Yeah. This is weird.
What I was expecting there. Well,
I've
it
been
wasn't
living in your
that.
closet for the last 6 months. I wondered why all the orange juice was drank in the morning.
Do you have these in a medium by any chance?
Where are all the eggs going? At $9 a carton.
I'm just saying it's the surprise of something like that where you're like, I thought they were just stealing my email or something. No, you realize screenshots.
Yeah.
They're getting into your clipboard and, finding out like stuff you copied and pasted. And
fun fact, I know someone who found someone living in their closet.
Oh, God.
Wow.
For months, they had no idea they were there.
God, that's terrifying.
Yeah. I've also heard of people like finding people living in their attic.
Yeah.
So your garage
There's a movie
door,
about
like
that.
they'll sneak in when as your garage door's open, they'll climb up in the attic and they'll just like homeless people will live there.
Yeah.
Glad I don't have an attic.
And because you have access to your the door into your house, they just waltz right in and eat your food.
Yeah.
People think I'm crazy.
Watch
for
your TV.
checking every room in my house when I come home and locking all my
you gotta
doors.
put a sensor on the inside door as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah, I lock my bathroom door and everything.
Yeah.
Like, even though it's, my front door is locked, but
You got an alarm
never
system?
be too careful. I live in an apartment, so I do not.
Oh, bummer.
I should probably.
You
Taser.
can get one. You can get like Ring and stuff
I
like
probably
that.
shouldn't
right?
have said that on.
Yeah.
I don't have an alarm
So what
system.
time are you normally home?
I got weapons, so stay away.
He's got a cane Corso sitting right at the
That's
door.
right. Yeah.
I keep a bat
That's
by
all
my
the
bed.
security she needs.
I do have a golf club sitting behind me. I don't know how how much good that would do me. It's not really
I'm
a.
just gonna catch it and be like, now you've angered me. I was just gonna steal your stuff, but now I'm upset.
All right, well, I talked about Robux, and now we're here. So if you've ever bought Robux before, they might be stealing your credit card data from that. So
Daddy
just-
Robux.
Robux.
All right. Well, we're getting off track again, which again is of course just how we like it here. And if you're enjoying Technado and all the little tangents that we go on, I encourage you to maybe subscribe if you don't want to miss any of the future episodes, and check out some of the other things that we've got on the IT Pro channel. We've got ACI Learnings live webinars and social events that live there. We had one last week. Daniel did a all things cybersecurity webinar with Mr. Jason Downey, and it sounds like that was a pretty good time. I wasn't present for it. Sounds like you had a good time.
Oh yeah, you missed a good show. It rocked. It rocked hard. He was amazing. So we We did. This was the first time we did a real rapid fire section where we just went through as many questions as we could in 5 minutes.
Like lightning round.
And yeah, we gave Jason 30 seconds to answer every question, and he was like a robot, man. Like he would answer that question well. And the last period was right on that 30 tick just about every time. It was crazy to watch.
Wow.
Yeah, he was super good guest, and I look forward to hanging out with Jason more.
This is what we get when we have AI guests on our show. They're very productive and very efficient. You know,
Wow.
it's a benefit. We've talked about that every webinar for like the past 3 months. And then also, we've got some fun stuff coming up next week. We are, of course, still going to have an episode of Technado, but it will be shot in a very special location because all three of us sitting here will be making our way to South Dakota for Wild West Hack and Fest. You may have noticed Daniel's got his shirt on from last year's festivities.
Yeah. He's never taken it off.
Last year was Back to the Future theme. This year it's X-Files. I'm like,
oh, is it really?
Yeah, you know me so well, Wild West Hack and Fest.
They curate it specifically to Daniel's interests.
They're just like, they've got malware all over my devices.
They're stealing your Minecraft data.
Monitoring me, yeah.
so
Daniel seems to really like X-Files. Let's do an X-Files.
want to make him happy.
Yeah.
So all three of us will be there, and Don won't be with us, unfortunately, but we will be shooting a Technado there. And I don't know. I mean, Ronnie, you've been before too, right? You both went last year?
Yes.
He went last year with me, yeah. I've been every year.
Okay. So he's how long has it been going on?
2016, I think, was the first one.
Okay. I thought you were going to say 26 years.
Yeah, 26 years.
Jesus.
Hey, back in that day, Wild West Hack and Fest, we're in the Wild West. We rode horses to the...
Did you, I mean, obviously you're going again this year, so I assume you enjoyed it. What'd you think of it last year?
It was great. Being able to meet the people that actually are doing, the actual hacking.
Yeah, boots on the ground kind of thing.
I mean, it's really great to actually meet that community and to realize that we have a lot in common with them. We just enjoy the technology, and they are too. They're enjoying learning.
Yep.
So it's pretty cool.
And what's funny is like that you might think, oh, this is a hackers convention, and only real hackers go to this. Like,
no,
you can
families.
be like, I found this interesting, and
there's
people that are from every area of the spectrum of I just started getting interested in cybersecurity to I've been doing this for the last 30 years, and I've got like 100 CVEs hanging from my belt. Like these, and everywhere in between. So there's plenty of opportunity to learn from everybody and have a great time. Get your hands on some stuff. They do a lot of hands-on things there. There's a CTF there. There's lockpicking there. There's always something cool going on at Wild West Hack and Fest. There's only usually a handful of vendors, but they're very specific to that space. And then the talks, man. The talks are the creme de la creme of what's going on.
And everybody loves to help you.
Yeah.
They want to help you.
Yeah. Do resume building, like interview practice, you name it. They have get-togethers, and then just the fun stuff. Yeah. Where they're going to have like a blues jam or like some sort of like music jam this year. This is a first for that. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Just a lot of fun things go on in South. Like Deadwood is just a fun little town.
I kind of love the idea that there's not an overwhelming amount of vendors there because you can focus on just like meeting other people and getting to know them on like instead of feeling like there's too much going on here. It's not horribly overwhelming of like all these different vendors and stuff. So I kind of love that idea. But it will be my first year, hopefully not the last, and I'll be going with these seasoned experts here. Not to put too much pressure on you guys, but it's nice because if I was going by myself, I'd be horribly stressed and terrified. But I'm kind of like, Ronnie and Daniel got it. They know what they're doing, which maybe I'm wrong to place trust in. You look confident. You're not so much. So we'll have to see. But we are.
I got lost in Deadwood. It's only one street. I mean,
well, at least we'll all be lost together.
I feel like I'm like a minor resident of Deadwood at this point because I've walked that entire town more times than I can count. So
I did too because I was lost.
Yeah. So he had no choice but to learn it.
Not on purpose. Yeah. Well, okay. I feel like I'm in halfway good hands.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in decent hands. It's going to be a fun time. I know we've been talking about it a lot the past couple months, and now it is finally here. So next week,
you get to eat at Taco John's.
Taco John's.
And
they've got like a Chuck Wagon or something.
That's the Chuck Wagon dinner is the last night. Yeah.
Okay. And we'll be there.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
It's just steak and beans and it's cool.
That sounds like right up my alley.
Yeah.
So we'll be there the whole week. If you are going to be there, come find us and say hello. If you've signed up to go, I think they just recently sold out like the virtual conference part of it. So it's going to be
a big deal.
It's kind of a big deal.
The chess tournament is still open from what I understand.
All right. Well, clearly there's some things that I missed that I
because
don't
we
know.
forgot to mention they have like tons of training going on as well.
Yeah, yeah, that is true. I got the email that had like, here's all the stuff you can sign up for, and it was
It's all phenomenal.
yeah. Every single one, I was like, that was
everyone.
interesting.
How do you pick from this?
Yeah, exactly. I asked Kathy, I'm like, am I allowed? She's like, of course you're allowed. So I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a good time. So if you are going to be there, come say hi. That's kind of the big thing that we've got going on this month. Of course, it is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, I think.
It is.
So it is fitting that we will be there. And we're kind of spending the whole month talking about that, doing some stuff. I think we've got some Halloween things maybe coming up. So keep an eye on the social channels and see what we've got going on there. Once again, I want to thank our sponsor, ACI Learning, the folks behind IT Pro. And as a reminder, you can click that Sponsored By button if you are watching from the Technado website and use that promo code Technado30 for a discount on your IT Pro membership. Otherwise, if you're not watching from the website, if you're watching from YouTube, we encourage you to leave a comment. Let us know what you thought. Maybe even subscribe and turn on notifications if you really enjoyed this episode. And of course, we've also got folks listening on podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We love that you guys are able to kind of listen to the audio format, and you don't have to look at us. You just have to listen to our voices. So we appreciate you sticking with us through these episodes and tuning in. So thank you so much for joining us for this episode. I think that's pretty much going to do it. Thank you, Ronnie, for joining us and filling in for Don. Big shoes to fill, but
Yes.
did a great job.
Indeed.
No pasta
Indeed.
debacle this week. I'm kind
No
of
pasta,
disappointed.
right? It's rice next
Close,
time.
yeah.
There's some cavatappi
Yeah,
outside the door.
yeah, man.
He's just creeping up.
Maybe a chili would be good. Chili.
Okay.
Extra spicy.
Yeah. Ronnie, no.
All right. All right. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode and bearing with us. And we will see you next week for Technado from Deadwood.